Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Starting with IEP. If this is your first time here, my name is Flor D'Amelia, and this podcast exists for one reason, and it is to help families truly understand the IEP process so they can confidently advocate for their child. But before we begin, I want to encourage you to grab a pen and paper because today's episode is packed with practical insights that can help you during your next IEP meeting. And while you're here, please take a moment to like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast. And don't forget to leave a comment. Your engagement helps this information reach more families who need the support navigating the special education system. Also, please make sure to visit our website at www.startingwithiep.com. And on the website, you'll also find free resources for family workshops for our online courses that walk families step by step through the IEP process. So you can walk into those meetings prepared and confident. And if you're a family member, friend, or coworker who is navigating the special education, please share this podcast with them. Many families are going through this journey alone, and sometimes the right information can make all the difference. Now let's dive into today's conversation. Today I am joined again by Michael, an experienced school administrator, and we're both discussing a topic that many families are facing in today's IEP meetings. We're talking about IEP length, the complexity, and family access. Some parents are still being told today that their child's IEP is running too long. Others are told that certain goals are unnecessary. And many families leave meetings wondering whether their child's plan is truly individualized. So in this episode, we are going to break down why IEPs sometimes become long and complex, why baseline data matters before writing goals, what families can do when services may not be delivered as written, and how parents and schools can work together instead of being against one another. So let's get started. Yay! Thank you so much, Michael, for coming back. I am really excited for the next topics that we're going to be discussing.
Cool. I'm glad to be back.
Yay! So in our last episode, we talked about when parents feel too loud, dismissed, or silenced. And we talked about grade repetition, diploma versus certificate track. So if you guys want to check out that episode, please do. It's a very great listen, actually. Michael gives powerful insights, and it would also help us collaborate with admin as parents. He just gives us his wisdom of so many years of being in the field. And now we're going to be talking about IEP length, complexity, and family access. So our first question is, families are sometimes told that their IEP is too long or unnecessary. Oh, don't I know it? How should teams balance thorough documentation with accessibility? And Michael, do you remember that I was telling you that admin told me that my daughter's IEP was too excessive, and he said that I'm the only parent that has done that? Can you please just share? Because I know I'm not the only family that does speak up.
You're not the only family, and I've seen IEPs that are really small and condensed, and I have seen IEPs that are vast. Go back to the description of what an IEP is. It's an individual education plan. So, what is best for that student and their disability and their needs? That's what should be in the IEP. Sometimes you will have a complex disability where you will have a ton of assessments from multiple related service staff, which has to be captured in the IEP. So you can't get around that. And those assessments from those related service staff potentially could lead to goals and objectives. All right. So
Yes. Ooh,
if
great point.
whatever you found in the assessment that will support the student's growth forward could be an objective and it could be a goal. I've always been a proponent to make goals and objectives really concise. You don't want tons of them because a lot of times teams write a goal and objective, and then the third goal and objective is almost the same thing, just with a different twist. And it's just a repetitive thing that you don't want the kid to have to struggle with. So the whole idea is to really write good goals and objectives to really support the student. But the length of an IEP and what's in the IEP, again, is determined by the student and the disabilities. You can't regulate if an assessment was ordered. You can't say we're not going to have that part of it. You can't do that. But what you can do is to make sure from a family's perspective, as well as the school's perspective, that you're pulling the things that you really need to pull from the assessment to really impact the IEP and the program for the student. Just throwing the kitchen sink at something is not the best way to do it. And I've seen IEPs that they just put so many things in because in those instances, what I found, they don't know what to do. So they just try 50 different things. There's nothing wrong with trying something. Give it some time. If it doesn't work, you reconvene and you redo it. Okay.
Yes.
But not to put everything in all at once. You need some type of balance, some type of scaffolding for the student to be successful. But just throwing everything in there is not the way to go. I have been in situations where schools have said to the parents that we're not going to put something in an IEP. Okay. IEPs are designed to support the student. So family or a parent truly believes that this goal, a specific goal and objectives will help really support the program and help the growth of the student, then you need to fight for that. Now, it's a team decision, obviously, and you're going and you'll be talking with providers that are experts in their field. Okay. But there's nothing wrong with trying, trial and error. Okay. Try something. See if it works. If it doesn't work, you reconvene and you redo it. There's nothing wrong with that. But you collect some data along the way, and then you see that from the data, again, from your perspective as a BCBA and a special educator, you look at data all the time. So if the data is showing a trend this way, which is not the way you guys originally thought that this goal and objective would move forward, then you reconvene and you talk about it. But the length of the IEP depends on the student and again, their disability. If there needs to be a lot of stuff in there, there needs to be a lot of stuff in there. And it's just, that's how it goes. Schools can't regulate and say, we can't put something in because it's going to make it too long. If it's really well written, then it should be fine. A lot of times, unfortunately, IEPs are not well written because, you're a teacher, you struggle with lessons, talking to families, all the other stuff you do in your life. IEP development tends to be on the back burner of all that stuff. Actually, it's one of the most important things a special educator can focus on.
You just reminded me. I went to Starbucks. I was meeting with a coworker because at Starbucks we met because it was the closest point to her because she couldn't come to the office. And we were talking about like classroom observations. She just had a question on those and how long they should be or how long if she's allowed to go more than 30 minutes. We were having that. And then there was a person that had piles of vanilla folders and then she was like, "Oh, and then she heard classroom observations, she heard IEPs. We weren't talking about the student. And then she was like, I'm struggling writing these IEPs. I felt for her because she said that she has been in general education for over 20 years. And now
Mhm.
she's going to be a kindergarten teacher. And she has no idea about how to write these IEPs. Now, I did offer, I was like, I can help you understand.
Of course you did.
Yes, but I saw her struggle. But I think also sometimes teachers I don't know if like teachers don't ask for help because they know they are supposed to get their own classroom supplies because what the school gives them is not enough. I guess it's just like a mom knows I have to feed my child, to clothe my child. That means I have to do all these extra things for my children because the teachers, they're also like their little kids. So I just don't know. Maybe it was hard for her to ask for help. I'm not sure of the situation, but she is working on an off day, on a day that she's off on these, not in the school, asking admin or the special education department chair for assistance on that. But I often see this in teachers. And then also, something else that you said. I don't know if I told you, Michael, but I'm going to give you an example. I don't know if I told you, but my daughter has expressive aphasia. But the reason why she has expressive aphasia, the diagnosis is because she has traumatic brain injury as a diagnosis. But that is due to her seizures, but also due to the 5 brain surgeries that she had. And me and my daughter's school team, we just couldn't agree on something. And in the IEP goal, it talked about different ways to collect data. Initially, it was gestural, vocal, and with her device. I was like, Aaliyah is minimally speaking. She doesn't need to do the whole gestural part of it. And I know Aaliyah does not like her device because she can say up to 9 words in a sentence, but because of her expressive aphasia and the traumatic brain injury, it's just difficult for her. But the neurologist told us that we have to practice
Sure.
using those long sentences. We didn't agree at the end. They were like, no, we're going to keep the device in there as a mode of her communication because I was pushing for it. It's more of a teaching tool. The device is a teaching tool to help her understand how to put those language. But her preferred method of speech is her vocal language.
Sure.
So we agree to disagree. Again, I'm more like, okay, did you put that in the PWN that I
Mm-hmm.
disagree? But we're going to
Mm-hmm.
come back in 45 days and I've requested for them to take data. Again, because the parents, we can argue how with data. So I asked for the baseline. I want the baseline to be taken for both. Which is her preferred method of speech? Is it the device? How much is she using it? Because I know for at home it's zero. She really hides it. She does not want to use it. So I asked them, and then they came back and it showed 3 to 7%. It was just so low that they know that her method of speech is for her to use her vocal speech, not her communication. But that was an example that when you said that you guys can reconvene, and I'm like, oh,
Sure.
definitely have that.
And that's actually a great example. You disagree, and in transparency, I would have pushed to keep it in there because for that reason. Let's look at the data. 45 days later, you realize that is not the method, then you can check that off and put it aside, and then you move forward. Okay. But at least you have the data to support it. But there's a way to disagree and there's a way to move forward. This is not one of these sticking points where you're like, it's like, okay, we hear you. I understand. Hear us. We just want to make sure and double check to check our box to make sure that it is not. I'm sure an AT specialist was there, like, yes, we got to keep it in, we got to keep it in, got to keep it in. Okay, that's your professional opinion. Let's keep it in. Let's do a dual data set. Okay, which works, which doesn't. This doesn't work. Boom, move forward.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well,
It doesn't have to be adversary. It could be,
yeah.
okay, this is a great idea. Let's see what works and
Yes.
support you instead of arguing with you saying, nope, I can see someone, you don't know what you're talking about because my AT specialist is telling me we don't need this. We're going to do it anyhow because you've been so argumentative. That's not how you approach these things.
Yeah, I think they thought I was trying to completely take it out. I'm like, no, I still
Sure.
need her to have that. I need the device to be her teaching method as a teaching tool, just like you
Mm-hmm.
use PECs. But my daughter's preferred thing is for her to use her voice. And sometimes the only way I get through people is, okay, fine, what's the baseline? That's typically my go-to. What's the baseline? I want to know what your baseline is, and then I'll go home and I'll collect my own, and then we can see why the environments are so different. Obviously, they're going to say it's a classroom versus the home environment, but yes, I thought that was great. Thank you so much for letting families know that the whole 45 to 60 days, they can reconvene. But typically, the parents say, okay,
Sure.
let's come back in 45 days and see how it goes. And then they might come back saying, let's do 60 so they can
Sure.
collect more data. But at least they're coming back and the families don't have to leave feeling frustrated.
Parents should not leave frustrated. This is a process that's very stressful for parents. And I've always tried, from a school's perspective, to make it as less stressful as possible because of all the things that families have to do. Okay. So that should be the goal of any school, to just make it as less stressful as possible. You're going to disagree. But again, in the world today, there's a way to disagree and there's a way to not to disagree. You can still disagree and still leave the room, okay, on the same page. What's the same page? What's best for the student?
Yes.
That is the number one thing. What is best for the student should always be in everyone's mind while they're talking. And it does not have to be adversarial. It just doesn't. It just does not.
Yeah. Thank you. In the last episode, you said there's us, and then inside it's the students. That was so beautiful. When I talk about the baseline, a lot of the times the schools, they don't have that data. And so a lot of times, like, how did you come up with this goal if you don't have a baseline? It is like a form of them oversimplifying because then if they don't have a clear where the child is in their foundational skills, how are they building this IEP? So what risk do schools take when they oversimplify IEPs for the sake of convenience? Like they just wrote up something without really
Well,
knowing.
the biggest risk is you waste time. 60
Mm,
days is a long time for a student with a disability not to learn something. The whole idea of being in a specialized program is for them to get very specialized instruction for core areas of deficit. So 60 days, if you waste it by just writing a really ridiculous goal where you don't have baseline or don't have any facts to support it, then you're wasting that time. Remember, you're on the clock now. 21's coming. All right. So if that student
Exactly.
is going to be in a specialized program to age 21, you need to start working on these really specific things that can help support the deficits to move them forward. So it's just ridiculous to write something like that because it just wastes everyone time. Then you got to come back and you got to redo it again. It just makes no sense. Okay, it's better to look at and really focus on the true need of the student right at the present time versus what you think they're going to need 5 years from now. Let's work on what is in front of us right now. Let's use the data that we have, the assessments that we have, and work on filling some of the deficits we see right in front of us, which then will lead as they move forward to some other things and then other things and other things. But writing nonsensical goals and objectives just wastes time and it's not beneficial to the school or the student because you're putting resources into something that you don't need to put in and that teacher could be focusing on something really that will be impactful for that student.
But thank you so much for saying, because that's exactly between me and you and between me and other parents, that's typically what I say. But how can we tell in the IEP meeting we don't want to waste time? Because a teacher might take that into like, so you don't think I'm doing enough in the classroom. But how can we say, please help me frame this? Because that's what we want to tell the school. We don't want our child to be wasting time.
Sure, a lot of times that should not be coming from the family, that should be coming from the IEP chair. The whole idea of writing that IEP is to make it concise as possible. So that person should be monitoring these things and stepping in when this stuff happens and says, wait a minute, that's really not something that the assessments bore out that we should be focusing on. So why don't we go back and focus on this versus that? That should be a school led situation. These are the facts. That person who you met in Starbucks, she was in gen ed for 20 years. She probably never knew how to write an IEP. Okay. So when you're in programs to become a special ed teacher, you go through courses in how to write IEPs. You can do that 50 times, mock IEP. It's till when you see a kid sitting in front of you and it's actually your student,
Mhm.
then it becomes a little bit harder to do it. Okay, so you can do all this stuff ahead of time and learn all the rules and stuff like that, but to actually do it is a different story. That's when the pedal hits the metal and your feet hit the ground. You just don't have that skill and ability to do it. It comes over time. Someone who's never had special ed students wouldn't know how to do it. That school needs to support them. The chair in the IEP, as I said, in this instance, should step in and say, wait a minute, that is not how we should proceed. We need to proceed this way and direct the staff toward this way versus having the family step in. You want the family not to have to step in as
Yeah.
much as possible. Okay. The family is there to listen and learn, not to sit there and go back and forth. That's the IEP chair. That's the person who is representing the school in the meeting who should be focusing on the right thing to do versus the wrong thing to do. So that's their job to do.
You know, when I got my master's in special education, there was no class for how to write IEPs. The only reason why I was ready for my students was because my daughter always had an IEP since
Mhm.
she was 3. And then before that, infants and toddlers, like I understood about progress. That's the only reason I was prepared as a first year teacher with an IEP. It was like, it was easy for me
Sure.
compared to other teachers. But I never actually thought about it that way until you said something. And I'm like, wait, what if I was a first time teacher? I would have been struggling. And how come they're not giving these lessons? I remember first, it was my first year as a teacher conducting the IEP. They told me what to say, but it wasn't like, okay, in this section, it wasn't like a IEP 101. They just assume, I think, with time, the teacher will have experience and they will learn like I learned as a parent, but there was no key class.
A lot of times, no, you're right. They don't have the training to do it and they're just tossed in there and it's expected to do it. So then they come out and they're like, this IEP is not very good. Well, of course it's not very good because they don't know how to do it. You need, as an administrator, you
Yeah.
know who your staff are.
Hmm.
Okay. You need to support them and give them the capacity to learn and give them the capacity with skills to build that skill set. But no one can just walk in there and just do it. I know a teacher, he's been doing this for 38 years. He can write an IEP. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not good because he's going back from IEPs that he wrote before and just recycling things. That's the other red flag. If you've been doing it for so long, sometimes you just recycle things. But remember,
Yeah.
IEP, individual. Worked for Michael 5 years ago is not going to work for Floor right now.
I have also seen they have very similar goals is because, if not the same goal, is because it's easier for the staff to collect data.
Sometimes that works out that way, but sometimes it
Sometimes,
doesn't.
yeah, sometimes it does,
Sure.
but not all. Depends
But
on the classroom,
purposely
right?
doing it that way,
Yeah.
again, IEP, individual. Class of six, I'd be hard pressed to say as an administrator if I found out that every goal is similar. Because if that's the case, gen ed, you do group instruction, that's where that works. In
In a
special
group
ed,
setting.
you can do some group interactions with kids, absolutely. But to work on specific goals and objectives, that would be very odd to me. And as an administrator, that would be a red flag. And wait a minute, we shouldn't be
Yeah.
doing this. That's not how we should be doing this because I am not you. You are not me. You are not Joe and John and Jane. Things need to be different because our disability manifests very differently.
Yes.
Okay. So
Instead of saying waste of time, what I say in the IEP meetings is that I need to make sure that Aaliyah's time is meaningful. Believe me, I do want to say that because often I do feel that she is wasting her time at school when I can be teaching her. So a lot of the times I noticed I was like, I just say I need for it to be meaningful, for her stay there to be meaningful.
that's a great way of putting it. Then that's not contentious. I heard that, I'd be like, there's a partner, not a
Mhm.
foe. And that's what
Mhm.
we are. We're partners.
Yes, definitely. Man, I wish you were the admin that I saw throughout my whole thing because I think the reason why my guard is always up is because since the beginning, I think if you were the admin in the beginning of my daughter's IEP, maybe we wouldn't have starting with IEP. Maybe we wouldn't because my journey from the beginning wasn't the good one. I've noticed in the beginning it wasn't, and throughout it wasn't. The only real great time was, I still remember the teacher's name. It's Miss Kate Falls at Gateway School. It was great. She loved collaborating. She loved talking to the parents. She loved listening to the parents' ideas. It was just so great. Even if that was my first experience, maybe it wouldn't be like, oh, I'm so like, why is she always
Oh,
on the guard?
this is not unusual. I hear a lot of stories like that. And again, it doesn't have to be that way.
I
It's how
know.
you run your school. And if you make parents and families and kids your focus, then all that other stuff just goes to the wayside. Partnership is important when writing IEPs. It's the most important process within a special education school, and it should be taken seriously and it should be taken as the priority. That is the guiding North Star of everything that goes on in a classroom for a student, the IEP. And if that's not done with integrity, with conscious belief that it's in the best interest of the kid, then you will have problems and it will not be a partnership. It will be a back and forth. And again, what
It doesn't
happens?
have to
The
be.
student loses. The student loses. Because now I'm mad at mom and who's it gets taken out on? The kid. And that should not be at all. But that happens. We have to
Yeah,
avoid that.
we have
So
to avoid
both
that.
families and schools should follow that rule. What's best for the student, leave your personal feelings behind and do what's right and come up in the middle
Yeah.
where the student can find a middle ground where a student can move forward with success. That's what you need to do. But when schools take hard lines, there's things you have to take hard lines on. Believe me, there are. And you have to say no. Hardest part of being an administrator or someone in leadership is to say no because it's easy to say, yes, we'll do it. Yes. No, sometimes it's really hard to say no, but sometimes you have to. But for the most part, you should be a partnership and you're finding yourself in the middle, working through issues in the best interest of the student to move forward.
Yes. Basically, what you're telling me is that we need a Michael in every school.
You know what? There's a lot of people who think the same way as I do. It just manifests in a different way. This is just through years and years of talking to families, seeing what works and doesn't work. I'm sure I've made my share of mistakes as well. Sometimes these meetings can get really stressful, but I learned
For
from the very
everybody.
beginning the minute I see that as someone heading to school, or in many years as I was an IEP chair at the School for the Blind, I took a pause. Just like you would take a pause with a friendship. Wait a minute, I disagree with you. Okay, then stop talking because what you're going to say next is probably going to be wrong. Just stop,
Yeah.
take a breath, take a minute, and reconcile in your head with the team as well as the parent why you were there. It's for the student. And then recalibrate and come back. But keep going. It's this. But
Yeah.
you learn that over time and how to do it and how to work with people. Working with people is hard. It just is
Yeah.
in any profession, whether you're a carpenter, electrician, a school administrator, a BCBA, a doctor, it's just hard. But you have to have some commonality in respecting the other person. I
And
respect you as
trust.
a parent and trust,
Yes.
yes. That just doesn't happen. You have to build
Yes.
up to that. So when I walk in, you don't know me. You're going to have to get to know who I am. But before I hit the door, my character should have already been in there, and you already know who I am because of the way I represent myself. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's how this should be done, but it's not done all the time. And it's just through doing it over and over again where you learn how to do these things. So I just happen to be doing it for a long time, and I'm probably better at it now than when I was 25.
With time, with experience, yes. When you said it's hard to say no, but for parents, well, for me, for example, I'm okay with accepting no if I trust that person. Like Miss Kate
Sure.
Falls, that teacher. If I say something and she was like, actually, no, I would be like, I trust you. If you really don't think that's the right thing for my child, I already gave you my share. But if you said no, my daughter in the classroom environment, I know my daughter in the home environment, but there's trust, I would take it. Does
Mhm.
that make sense? Because there's this
Oh,
trust.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But that only comes with being able to communicate with someone. A good
Yes.
teacher can be communicating with a parent. So coming to an IEP, you should not be hit over the head with, I never heard this before. You
Yeah.
never talked to me
Oh, yeah.
about it. If you've had conversations all the way through, then what you're hearing in the IEP is everything you've already heard from that teacher previously. So it's
Hmm.
not new. So then when it comes down to saying, okay, Fleur, I think we're going to not do this, but we're going to do this, then you'll say,
Yeah.
okay, we've already talked about it and we've
Yeah.
talked through it, and I can trust that. We'll try that and move forward. But if
I
I
love
just tell you walking into the meeting this and you're like, you never told me that before,
that.
you'll be like, how do I trust you? Because you never said a word to me in
Ooh.
6 months
Yeah,
before.
you're right. Through communication, you're gaining
Correct.
trust.
Communication is key to any IEP, whether you have experience or not experience. If you can communicate the right way in a respectful tone with integrity, then saying no, which sometimes you have to, is taken in the light that it's presented. It's necessary sometimes. And you have data to support it. No, Flora, we're not going to do this because
Mhm.
X, Y, and Z. Here's X, Y, and Z right here. And you're like, okay, I can see it. I know the baseline. I know where the data is going. Then
Yeah.
it's easier to say, no, let's move this way. But just getting hit over the head with something,
Yeah.
I would say, nope, we're not doing that because you never told me about it. It's just
Hmm.
like an employee going in for a performance review. Hi, how are you? Oh, guess what? You're not very good. You do this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. Well, you never told me that.
It's like a shocker.
You had a whole year to tell me I was doing something wrong, but you never told me to try to help me fix it.
Yeah.
So that's not fair. And it's not fair to the family. It's not fair to the employee when you do put them in a situation like that. So it's just communicate.
But let's say the family wasn't given communication, therefore no trust, then how can the parent respond when they are discouraged from asking for detailed goals, data, or service descriptions?
That's a tough one. Sometimes parents get annoyed and angry, and then it becomes a contentious situation. I respond by staying calm, using real clear data and information that you have in front of you, and just sticking with your ask. You can take a break and have a conversation with the chair or the administrator and say, hey, listen, this is a problem. Okay, we don't want to handle this in within the entire team. I want to handle this outside of that so we can move forward. But having a conversation with them, talking about that before you come back to the team would be more advantageous versus having that argument within the team structure. Because then you have 10 people that you're going to be debating with versus one. So maybe having that conversation with the chair of the meeting or the administration to talk about it, then coming back. But stick with your ask. If you truly believe something needs to happen, don't waver. Do it respectfully. If they continue to say no, and they may, make sure it's documented in the PWN. And then you have that as a basis if you have to contest it in the future. But always make sure that it's captured that you have disagreed with it. Sometimes they put you disagree with it. Parent disagrees.
That's not
Nope,
enough.
not good enough. Parent disagrees because. Why? Because when you go back to that, they're only going to see Fleur was arguing. She just said no. But why did she say no? There's a reason why she said no. articulated in the PWN why you disagree with it. So again, you have that to go back to if you
Mhm.
have to move forward in some type of complaint or things like that.
Yes. I was just in an IEP meeting, I think it was 2, 3 weeks ago, and the mom received the PW and we were reviewing it together. And she said no to a lot of the things that the school was saying because they viewed her child differently. But not all of her no's were there. But good thing that we kept note of all the no's. So we compared it. And then she wrote an email saying, I've noticed in the PW and that certain things were missing. And then she just add on, she's like, I need you to add this onto this PWN.
Two things to keep in mind. One, as a parent, you're trying to focus on a lot of things. Keeping notes is a good idea, okay? Especially in those instances. But again, from a school's perspective, there is not one IEP that I ever walked out of before at the very end, I would summarize the decisions.
Mhm.
We said this, we said we're going to do this. You disagreed with this. We documented in the PWN because of this. You said this. And before I left, I summarized, okay, speech, you are going to do an assessment. You're calling for an assessment. It needs to be done within 90 days or whatever. Here's the date. OT, you have to do this. We ask you to change this goal. BCBA, we ask for more data for this, blah, blah, blah. And you go down the list, the menu of everything that you've had, all the decisions. Does everyone agree? Okay. Then in the PWN, we summarized each decision. We talked about it. Everyone agreed. Boom. Then everyone walks out with what they heard, what was said, and the direction to move forward. I can tell you just from walking from my time at the Maryland State Department of Education, why I sat in meetings as just an observer, that did not happen a lot. Okay, we're done, move, and you just done. It leads to
Yeah.
problems. It leads to problems.
Yes.
And that's not how you should do it. That
Yeah.
always was my way of sending people on their way with clear direction, with clear understanding of what we just talked about. So everyone had clarity and no one could walk out saying, I don't remember that.
Thank you. So, families, you heard it. Make sure at the end of the IEP meetings to have that summary, and that way everyone leaves with a clear mind
Sure.
about what was summarized.
Ask the chair to summarize it. You can
Yes.
ask, can you please summarize our decisions? If they're doing their job, they should have a list of a notepad with all the things here. Okay.
Mhm.
They should. If they say, oh,
Yes.
we can't do that, there's a problem.
Yes. Also, one of the things that I was noting down here for the detailed goals, if the parents feel they're being discouraged from with the detailed goals, often what I do is that I ask them, how are they collecting their data? Because a lot of the reasons why I ask that is because I feel that the goals are not being, it's not detailed enough to capture real progress. And if they're also hesitant in changing it, then I ask from classroom observation. So then that way, as a parent, or I can ask my daughter's private speech pathologist or private OT, or if there's a private special ed tutor or the BCBA of the family, they can come in and then they can observe. And that's how they can push for a better detailed goals, more data, or the service description. Because I feel sometimes the school may feel that they don't have to add more details in those goals. The reason why we want better data is because we want to capture that there's real progress, not artificial progress. I think
Sure.
sometimes parents get confused with both.
It's like going on a trip. You plug in your GPS, you want to go to Starbucks.
Mm,
You want the best
I
route to
love
go to
that.
Starbucks. You don't want to go all around
And then get to Starbucks.
and then get to Starbucks. So the more detail in the direction, the
Beautiful.
better. Then you get to Starbucks on time and then you do other things and you have more time to do it. So the more direction that a teacher has, as a teacher, you would want a detailed goal because that helps you when you're putting together materials for that student. Is just open-ended. We're going to do this 4 out of 5 trials, whatever. It's too simplified. Put more detail in it, helps the teacher, okay, helps the parents see clearly you're trying to get from point A to Starbucks in the best amount of time to get the best coffee. And here, you're trying to get to point A to point Z in the best amount of time to get the best result and the best learning experience for the student. So more details is good, not bad. And someone who would say, oh, we don't need all that stuff in there, I would argue against it and say, you do need it in there to make it a lot clearer for the teacher the teacher may have 8 kids they're writing IEPs for. At that point, and you know this as a teacher, all these things start just coming together. So this kid has this. Oh, wait a minute. Does this kid have this? Oh, no, this kid has this. If it's detailed, oh, no, that's only Michael that has this.
Mhm.
That's better. It keeps you focused on your journey toward instruction. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Thank you. I love that example because when I go, especially to Baltimore, because it's such a long, and then there's like traffic, and then I try to go off to the side to see if I can, because there's just traffic there. But I was like, this experience is so negative. It's so negative. I don't want to go to Baltimore anymore. So it can be the same thing for the students. There
Yes.
can be an easier route or there can be shortcuts. If it's a negative experience, the child may not want to actually finish that goal or do that goal. So I love your example.
Yeah. Sometimes the simplest things are the easiest things.
Yes. But what should administrators remember about why some families need more detail than others?
Easy answer, easy question, because it's an individual plan for that student. Every student is different. Every student requires certain things versus other students. So, whatever that student requires to be successful, that you garner from the assessments that have been done for that student, that's what you have to do. And that's the detail that you put in to it. Some kids have IEPs that are minimal, okay? Because their disability is reflecting that. Some kids, like your daughter, has multiple things going on, okay? Where you need more complex instruction or complex detail map to get to where you need to go. And in
Mhm.
that instance, that works. Her IEP, your daughter's IEP, is not going to work for some other kid because it's
Mhm.
not written for them. It's written for her from her disability perspective, as well as all the assessments that the professionals did to get to what is going to be best to help support her, to help her learn.
Yes. I remember once a school provider disagreed with what I was suggesting, and her thing was like, Miss Hoffman, I have worked with many students with autism. That's my specialty. And I was like, that's great, but that's not Aaliyah. That's not her only diagnosis. She has traumatic brain injury. She had seizures since she was finally diagnosed at 9 months old, when really she was supposed to be diagnosed as early as 7 months old. So she started having her seizures there. And then she has 5 brain surgeries. And I was just trying to explain to her, you just can't lump her with the rest of the students, which I actually hope that she wasn't doing that, because every other kiddo can have another diagnosis, but maybe they haven't been diagnosed. I just didn't like that response. So definitely, it's not being individualized. The instruction was not individualized. She just put Aaliyah in this group of kids.
Unfortunately, this happens a lot with our students with autism. They get lumped together, and as
The
autism looks very
spectrum.
different in many forms and fashion. Okay, so you just can't say, oh, kid has autism. That is different for your child. It's different for someone else's child, and it's different for someone else's child. So lumping them together just under the autism
Hmm.
disability, not good.
Not
There's
good.
other things that are going on. More than likely, someone with autism has something else also that's
Hmm.
happening or prevalent. It may not have been diagnosed, as you said, but it's coming out and manifesting in some other forms. Okay. And only through instruction, through the IEP, through data collection and observation, do you start picking these things up and be like, oh, wait a minute, we maybe need to assess for this. Then it's a multiple disability diagnosis versus just autism. But just lumping everybody together and they have autism, autism is a long line with different points on it. Okay. So you can't just say everybody's here when
Yeah.
someone's here, someone's here, someone's there, someone's there, someone's there. You can't. I
Okay.
try never to say, I've been doing this for 35 years. There's things that I see that I've never seen before in 35 years. So saying that just because I have a lot of experience doesn't mean that I can't see new things or learn new things or haven't seen it at all. And going into a relationship with a parent and say, I've been doing this, I know. Well, okay, great having experience. But sometimes you always need to leave yourself open to learning other things, and that's just not the basis of knowing everything. Not everyone knows everything. There's things that I don't know that you can teach me, and there's things that you know
you know that you can teach me.
Yeah. So it goes that way. It's
Thank you.
hard when you're sitting in that meeting trying to do these things.
Yes, it is. I think that definitely brought my what's going on in that school, which I'm sure if parents suspect that IEP services were not being delivered as written, where should they start, Michael? Please tell them.
That's a loaded question, Flor. So, from an administration perspective, I hope that you walk into my office and say, Michael, I have a problem. And hopefully, Michael will turn around and say, please talk to me about your problem. That's how it should go. Sometimes, depending on how that relationship is, if it's not a partnership, then sometimes it goes from 0 to 100 immediately when it doesn't need to do that. Sometimes parents go directly to MSDE, file a complaint, which they have a right, and that is a process, versus coming in and talking to someone like me and saying, listen, there's a problem. Can we talk about it? And
Mhm.
I should turn around and say, absolutely. Tell me what's going on. Me do my research with the team, figuring out what the problem possibly is. Okay. And then trying to resolve it right then and there. But you should always start with the school, the head of school. Okay. And talk to them about things that are going on. If they're doing it the right way, should be able to take that information and try to figure it out without getting to DEFCON 5. Sometimes you keep going into administrator and saying, hey, this is a problem. They're like, oh, we'll talk about it. We'll get into it. But they never get back to you, or they do certain things and they don't respond. Then you do go to DEFCON 5. Then you can file a complaint with MSTE and they will come in and they will review the issue. Okay. You have that right and ability. But you should always start with the administrator, and everyone has a boss.
Mhm.
Okay. Everyone has a boss. The IEP chair has a boss. This head of school has a boss. The head of the school, who's above the head of the school, has a boss. So if you go through those steps and still don't get an answer, then you can go to MSDE and file a complaint, and they'll come in and review it and go from there. But
You
that
know
would
where
be
I
the last resort. Always start with the head of school. And hopefully that person has built a leadership base where they have the capacity to listen and understand without having a contentious response.
Yes, back in my military days, it's like follow the chain of command.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
Oh,
Sometimes you go to the teacher, you don't get anything from the teacher, you go to the IEP chair. You don't get anything from the IEP chair, you go to the head of school. You don't get anything from the head of school, you go to the central office. You don't get anything from central office, you go to the MSTE. And that's what they're there for. And there's a whole department that just looks at these issues, and they come out and they review them with a team from the county that the student is living in, as well as people from the state, and they figure it out. You don't want to get there. I've been in those situations. From a school perspective, it's a time suck. You have to come in, there's a whole team you have to meet with, you have to review all the documents, you have to do this, there's lawyers, there's that. I'm telling you, it is a process that if you don't ever have to go through, you don't ever have to want to go through it.
no.
It
Yeah.
could be avoided just by having a conversation. And the
Yes.
teacher should have a relationship with the head of school to walk in and say, listen, Leah's mom came in and had a problem. This is what she said. Can you help me with it? Absolutely. I want to solve this problem before it gets to another level, because it just represents the school in a bad way if we can't have conversations as adults. Once that gets to the point, then that's a problem. But sometimes it goes that way, and every parent has the right to do that.
Yes. Thank you so much for letting us know that's the chain of command, the chain that we need to follow. But let's say that they do talk to the teacher. It felt like the teacher didn't know much. So then what was going on? Let's just say that they suspected that speech wasn't done. Because remember that other case that I was telling you about how the mom, about it was supposed to be one-to-one, but it ended up being a group. Let's say the teacher wasn't sure. The speech pathologist was closing off the doors to her. What documentation can the family request in order to verify that the sessions were actually conducted?
The service log should be available for service, and that should designate what that provider provided. Was that in one-to-one instruction? Was it a group instruction? If you're pulling the kid out, or if you're pushing into the classroom and you're doing a group activity, then it's obvious right there what they're doing. But if you're pulling the kid out, that should be one-to-one service. But if you're pulling them out into a group, you can go back to the service log and look at that and see what they provided. They have to document that.
I had encounters with families when what they shared is that the service logs, what they retrieved, they had dates where their child did not go to school on those dates. We have to look at the dates just to verify because maybe they thought they saw the wrong child. I'm just trying to see why would you put fake data in there?
Been there, done that. There's someone at the school who should be tasked once a
Mm-hmm.
month to go through the service logs to make sure they're accurate, once a week, bi-weekly, and then confer with the related service staff. Wait a minute, you had service scheduled for the 5th, but we don't have any documentation for that. We have this student was put in here versus here. Someone needs to review them, okay, on a regular basis to make sure that they're accurate. Related service folks are busy. They see a
Yeah.
lot of kids. Pull in, push out. They can make mistakes. Most of the time, they're innocent mistakes. They're not purposeful. I put that wrong. Oh my God, I put the wrong date. Then just correct it. That's fine.
Yeah.
But someone has to
Yeah.
review them and go through them. If you are not going through them as a school, I'm telling you, and I've been there, that is a problem. Then you get to the point where you have a complaint. MSDE comes in, okay?
And we'll audit.
They ask for your service logs, and there's discrepancies. You are on the hook, and that's not a good hook to be on,
Mm.
okay? And that's a problem because then, again, just from the perspective of MSDE, when I worked for MSDE, I would go out to the school sometimes from the assessment division to look at a test infraction, okay? So I was coming out to look at for something very specific and narrow. But you're taught at MSDE, you walk in, you're looking at this, a narrow issue. Your eyes are still peripheral. You see it all. So if you see something over here that's a problem, it
Mm.
is your obligation to report it and to talk about it. So they could be coming in for a very specific thing.
Just opens
And
a can of
then
worms.
guess what? That can of worm pops open. And then you're there for 3 months and someone's coming out every week reviewing all your files, this, that, and the other thing. That's not what you want because
Mhm.
that's their job to do it. I would tell principals when I walked in, I'm looking for this, but if I find this and something else, so tell me ahead of time.
Yeah.
Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? Yes, no, yes. Okay. To the no question, let's look at it together. I'll help you before I document it to give you an opportunity to understand the problem. And then I'll come back and see if you did it. But I wouldn't report that right away. I'd give them an opportunity if they were honest with me and said, nope, we didn't look at that. Okay. Let's look at it together and do it that way. Some of my colleagues didn't think like that. They just came in, oh, that's a problem, write it up, problem.
That's a problem. That's a problem.
That's not how I operated. That's not how I built goodwill because I could walk in when I worked for MSD, walked in to hundreds of schools. But when I walked in, people knew who I was. They knew I would be fair and objective, and I wouldn't be someone who tried to hook them and try to grab them. It wasn't a gotcha moment. My job at MSDE was not to get people, it was to help people, support. We were a support division. Okay. And that's how I treated it. Some people don't treat it that way. That's how I treated it. But you always are honest. Oh, we didn't do that. We didn't look at it. Okay. That's cool. Let's do it together. But
Well,
if you
Michael,
tell me
thank you.
you did and you didn't, oh, then we have a problem. Then,
What else are you hiding?
correct. Oh, and then in
Yeah.
that case, then they start asking for everything. And when you get to a point in a school where they start asking for everything, not
Oh,
every school has every dot dotted. I can tell you, even the schools I ran, I know that there's things that sometimes you miss, erroneous, not because
clerical error.
purposely. Yes,
Yeah.
clerical errors can be the downfall of a school because they're important. So
Yes. That's what we need. What do they call it? The person that checks everyone else's work.
checks and balances,
Yes.
review. That head of school needs to assign someone to review these things to make
Making
sure that
sure that the
to make
services
sure
are
that it's
being
all
given.
happening.
Were you a teacher also? Sorry if I
Yes,
missed that. You were
years
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 ago.
ago.
What type of
Years
teacher?
ago. I started out in preschool, kindergarten.
Oh,
I probably was the worst teacher. You know why? Because I was so detailed and organized that here was my lesson plan. And it's like, wait a minute, we're not following the lesson plan. I couldn't deal with it. So I'm like, I'm not really good at being a teacher. I was really good. I found my skill set. I was really
wow.
good at curriculum. And then it was all leadership as well. So I just wasn't a very good teacher. I had to follow
But
the
you
script.
care about the students.
Oh, I love kids. I
I
love kids.
notice how you always focus on them and making sure that they're first good and then everything else, but first them.
You remember the expression I said when you're on an airplane and you see the mask come down and they give you directions. Adults, put the mask on yourself first and
Yeah.
then the student. If you're not good, you can't help the students. But ultimately, you helping yourself will help that student, that person, because you're in a better position to help them. Okay. But it always goes back to them, what's best for them.
Yes. I remember you saying that, and I'm like, I'll put it on my kids first. And you're like,
I
put it
know
on
you
the floor.
said you put it on your kids first and you pass out and you're not there anymore. Who's going to help them?
I know. I was like, let's see if I've ever been put on the test on that. Will I remember to do what you're telling me to do?
With 5 kids, you're going to have kids all over the airplane. So you can't run up to get this one and that one and that one. You're going to have to just do it that way.
Yes, but
Yeah, they
thank
don't make
you.
5 across seats on airplanes for your family.
With me and Sean, we were like, okay, we couldn't get this row, but we got this and then this and a little bit over there with our teenagers. So thank you so much for that. Actually, it was the first time that I've heard how an auditing process from the school with that much detail. No schools, they have to go through that, but I didn't know that they have kind spirits like you that allow it to feel fair, not to make it such a negative experience. Because I know that there are schools that really want to do good. It's just they're scrambling. So thank you for that.
Well, I can tell you, a couple years ago, I took over a school that was struggling, and I think I was there just a month, and I saw someone who I worked for, the MSDE, walk in, and they were out here because there was a complaint. I'm like, okay, and I'm like, I know these people, so it's, hey, how you doing, blah blah blah, and there's a process that they go through, and one of the questions was that service delivery was not happening. So my first question was, okay, let's pull the service logs. Okay, who's been reviewing the service log? No hands go up. I'm like, no
Yeah.
one has reviewed them?
So
Looks
we're
like
gonna
we
fix
may have a
first.
problem.
Yeah.
So from there, no one had reviewed them. There was multiple issues. From there, I put in a process that any other time that how they were reviewed, why they were reviewed, and when they were reviewed. Okay. Next time, if there was a complaint, which there was, came in, service log, they were reviewed. So I knew the data was accurate because it was reviewed, because they signed off on it, and able to give it to MSD without having to worry that, oh my God, we're going to have the whole ship collapse. But the first time, when no one raised their hand, I'm like, there's a problem because you're not doing it the right way. So I put steps in place to never have that issue again, which we didn't, because then they were reviewed, they were accurate. There was mistakes made sometimes, but the reviewer picked them up every other week, not 6 months down the line, because then you have to go back to related service and say, what did you do on February 3rd? I don't remember. Did you see Michael? I don't remember. Michael is showing he was absent, but you have him logged in as you provided service. I must have made a mistake. But 2 weeks after that, it's in your mind. Oh, no, no, no. I meant to put John in there versus Michael. Okay, we fix it. But you wait 6 months, a year, you're in trouble. School
Yeah.
shouldn't do that. So learn from those mistakes, which I learned from. You never do it that way.
Thank you for that insight. From an administrator standpoint, what typically causes like the service gaps and how transparent should the school be? So I know the school is being transparent to MSDE, but what about now the family?
Well, I'll pull a recent example from a school that I had. We were struggling to hire speech pathologists. We couldn't find them. There sometimes are unicorns within the field. So kids were not getting the service that was dictated in the IEP. But in that situation, then you should be very transparent with the family that this is the reason why that service is not being, not because you don't want to provide it, but because you can't find a provider. Okay. You need to be very transparent with the LEA to let them know that, listen, your student who is coming from ABC County is not getting speech services because we can't find a provider. We are searching for it. We have a company looking for one, but we're adding up those hours to provide back-ended services for these kids. The other thing, every month, schools should be, again, this is how I did it, schools should be going through those service logs, and whatever hours are not been completed, a letter should go out to the parent, CC to the LEA, and said, we did not perform XY services. This is the amount. We will push them forward into the next month or the next semester to provide them then. At the end of the year, if you still don't provide them, then there's an IEP, okay? And the IEP determines, do you provide the service or do you just write the service off? That's a decision for the team to make. But every month that should be happening, and communication should be made to the parent as well as the LEA what is happening and what is not happening. If
Hmm.
it was becoming dire at this place to find SLPs, that we did have to start putting kids in groups just to get some service. But then you go to the parents and say, Floor, we're going to do some group service providing because we just don't have enough people to do the individual. So we're giving them something versus nothing. Okay. But to let the parent know that that's an extreme.
Hmm.
But finding providers is probably the biggest thing of why you have service gaps or someone's out, things like that.
Maternity leave, it happens.
Yeah, maternity. But again, from an administrative
Oh,
perspective,
I know.
if
Yeah.
I know someone's going on maternity leave, I already know that. I'm planning ahead to get someone to provide services for that. Well, it's going to cost you money. Well, that's cost of doing business.
Yeah.
Sorry. You have to bring a contractor in to provide the service.
Then what would be the appropriate response when a school discovers that the hours were missed? How do the families get compensated, or how should they go about telling the families, or would they say that?
Well, they should the next month, if they have the ability to double up on service. So if it's 2 hours a week, they do 4 hours a week. You can double up service like that. You can write out a plan. And if you say you have 10 hours that you've missed, you can stretch those hours across 6 months and say, we're going to provide one here, one here, one here, one here, one here.
Hmm.
But just to say, oh, we're going to fill those gaps. No, I want a plan in writing how you're going to do it. I want to know how you're going to do it. It should be put in writing. It should be given to the parent. And again, any school should have a partnership with the LEA and they should be aware of it. The last thing you want to happen as a school is that parent goes to MSDE, complains, the LEA finds out about it. They know nothing about it because technically, if you're talking about a non-public school, that child attends the non-public, but that's not their student. That's the county student. The county is on the hook for that. They are responsible for that student ultimately. The non-public is the provider, but the county is responsible ultimately overall per Comar for that student. They will go back to the county first, then to the non-public, and then the county will come to the non-public and say, listen, we refer 20 students here. You're not doing your job. We may pull these kids out and send them to another non-public because you're not
Hmm.
providing what we need. Okay, but you don't ever want that to happen. That's why communicating with the LEA and the parents simultaneously, everybody's aware. It's like parents. You tell
Yeah,
mom and dad,
we're good.
well,
Right.
maybe mom and dad aren't together. Okay, you send 2 letters then. Okay, but mom and dads should know, or guardians should know, as well as the LEA
Yeah.
simultaneously.
Yeah, this reminds me of my 14-year-old. I tell my 14-year-old, if you tell me before I find out from the school, we'll be fine. I just don't want to find out from the school first.
You
And
know
you
how I
tell
learned that lesson? Because again, this is the irony in my career. I spent more time in the principal's office than probably most kids. And my dad would come in, but if there was an issue, he already knew about it.
Mhm.
So he was cool because I already told him.
Yeah.
The times he didn't know about it, that was
Yeah.
not a good conversation on the way home. But it's so ironic that I picked this profession because I probably caused many heads of school to leave their profession because I was such
I can't
uh,
believe that though.
oh, yeah. I ask a lot of questions. They said to my parents, can he stop asking questions? He just asks too many questions. So maybe I
I,
should have been a lawyer. Who knows?
so
No. So I always had fun with the kids, and I told them that I was always in the principal's office. They're like, I can't believe you did that. It's like, yeah, not that I did bad things. I ask a lot of questions. So that's why I think doing this work,
yeah.
it put it in perspective for me. So when people ask questions, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Remember, I said, I'm curious. Can
I
you
love that.
explain to me why? Okay. All right.
Yes.
In my office at any school, I always had that phrase, I'm curious. And it was
Mhm.
on my door. So when you walked in, you could learn that lesson immediately as soon as you walked into my office.
I'm
I am
curious.
curious, dot, 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 dot. If you
Mm,
start off a sentence like that, then it's not contentious. You're just asking
I
the
love
question.
that saying.
I'm curious, Floor. How come you did that?
Well,
Instead
Michael.
of you did that. Why? You know what I mean?
Well, Michael, let me start my sentence with saying, I'm curious to know what happens. No, seriously though. I'm curious to know what happens when a student is absent. Do they have to get that? Are they able to get that hour back? Or because a lot of the times what I hear is that, nope, they're absent. They don't have to make up that hour, even though we
Depends
need
why
it
they're
for school.
absent.
They're sick.
If it depends why they're absent. If it's a legitimate reason, then sometimes they don't have to do that. If it's because and the school wasn't notified of the absence, or they went on vacation or things like that, then that's a different story. But it depends on the absence, and it depends on the notification and the communication between the school and the service provider and things like that and the parent. Again, if you're related, this goes back to being a related service staff as well. If you're not available, then let the parents know. Let the parents know, because sometimes kids are on a very specific schedule.
Yeah.
And sometimes kids know, oh, Friday's speech day. I'm going to have speech services. Well, you're not going to be there. Let the parents know that, because then that's a conversation with the kid and say, wait a minute, Mr. Michael won't be there on Friday. You're going to have speech on Thursday. Okay. Oh, but that's not in my schedule. I know it's not in your schedule, but we're going to shift it to Thursday so you can see Mr. Michael versus Friday. But the same thing with parents. If you know your kid's not going to be in, let this provider know so they can rearrange the schedule to provide services on the day that they are going to be there. Okay.
Yeah.
But then you have snow and you have sickness and you have all this other stuff that comes into play that wreaks havoc on the best of schedules. So again, it's just communication from the school to the providers to the parents of how to handle some of these things.
So for a school that is not able, let's say the parent just gives them enough time, let's just say 2 weeks, because they know that their child is going to be hospitalized for some. I'm just saying they have the flu and it's going to take about a week to recover. So this whole week is gone for those related service hours. But if the school is on a tight schedule and they really cannot make up those hours, but since the child is absent, most likely that means, or is it up to the school? It just depends on the school's availability.
I always took it from this perspective. If we could redo those hours, we would. Okay. It's best practice. If you can do them, then do them. Okay. If you can make them up, then make them up. Okay. But if you potentially have a parent who keeps their kid out, and they're not coming, then that's a problem. Then making up surfaces, then no, I wouldn't do that. But more than likely, if I could do it, I would work out with the provider to do it, because at the end of the day, what's in the best interest of the kid? To perform the service. But again, you're right, schedules get tight, and sometimes you just lose the ability to do it, and that's not your fault. That's because, the kid's out. Why wasn't Michael here today? We don't know. Okay. It wasn't a planned surgery. It wasn't this. Then sometimes they don't get made up. I always would try to, though. That's the best practice.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I already know that, like you said, speech pathologists, hard to find in schools. Also psychologists, really hard to find. So whenever it's like something is missed or we can't get that back, we can barely make it. So yeah, thank you for that clarification. Well, we're going to be shifting towards ESY, one-to-one support, and high-cost services for our next series of questions. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Starting with IEP. If this episode has helped you better understand the IEP process, please take the moment to like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast and leave a comment letting us know what topics you'd like us to cover next. And please share this episode with someone who might need it, whether that's a family member, a friend, a coworker, or another family who is navigating the special education system. The more families who understand the IEP process, the stronger our advocacy becomes for students. So if you're looking for more guidance, support, make sure to visit our website, www.startingwithiep.com. There you'll find free parent resources, workshops and training opportunities, and our online courses designed to help families understand the IEP process step by step. These courses are designed to help families walk into the IEP meetings feeling prepared, confident, and informed. Thank you for being part of this community and for your continuing to advocate for your child. Remember, an IEP is not just paperwork. It's the roadmap for your child's future. And when parents understand the process, they become powerful advocates. I'll see you in the next episode of Starting with IEP. Bye.